get cracking, I think. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Gurim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. So, thank you for coming to our presentation on succession and legacy planning. This presentation really is a nod to strategic planning. In 2023, the leaders of ISKCON Melbourne got together and we did a number of sessions of strategic planning with consultants, and we identified 5 focus areas that we needed to concentrate on. The first was finance, the second was expansion, the third was governance, the fourth was community engagement, and the fifth was, what do you think? Succession. Yes, succession. And we're not experts on this, by the way. And I don't think anybody in ISKCON is actually an expert when it comes to succession. One of our friends, when they heard that we were considering retirement, said to my wife, Achintya Rupa, Achintya Rupa and I, we're partners in crime. We joined ISKCON together and have served together in Melbourne for the last 47 years. And Hare Krishna. And we've managed the temple. I've been the temple president, but of course wouldn't have done it without Achintya Rupa's assistance for the last 35 years. So we have a lot of skin in the game, is what they say. So when one of our friends heard that we were planning on retiring, they said, well, look at Yasomatinanda Prabhu. He left his body and he was still the temple president. So why don't you just stay until you leave your body? Huh? But you know, Achintya Rupa had a heart attack in 2023. I had a stroke at the beginning of 2024. So I don't know if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, but I do recall some facts of life. Birth, death, old age and disease. You may have heard of these things. And of course, when we get to our age, then we start to realise what Prabhupada was actually talking about. Right? So, in the pursuance of the focus area succession, we came up with a broad objective. I'll read it to you. To establish leadership continuity in key positions by identifying people who are ready to step into someone else's shoes at the appropriate time and circumstance, ensuring seamless transitions of personnel when necessary. Right? So rather than, just leave it on somebody or dropping it on somebody when we disappear, we thought better let's have some planning. Let's have some seamless and smooth transitions. So what we're going to do is just show you a little bit of our journey and where we're up to and how we are hoping to proceed into the future. So this is pretty straightforward. How we got here, where we want to go, what we can do now, and then a couple of housekeeping matters. So, at the end of last year, Achintya, Rupa and I filled out a survey for our what should we say, strategic implementation consultant. And he asked us a number of questions about what our hopes and aspirations are and what our concerns are. And so this is referring to that conversation. So in 2024, as a result of the strategic planning work that we embarked on, we created a number of outcomes related to governance and our focus areas. We came up with an organisational chart which describes the different entities that we have: ISKCON, Hare Krishna Food for Life, and our proprietary limited company which runs our restaurants, all owned by ISKCON Melbourne. So the organisational chart describes 148 positions, roles within the organisation. And we identified the top 10 positions, and along with those, their position descriptions. In fact, most of the 148 roles have position descriptions. Right? One of the reasons for that is, in Australia and probably elsewhere, if you're going to be an exemplary volunteering organisation, then in order for your volunteers to know what your organisation is and how they might fit into it, have a guess what you need. What do you need? Well, you need an org chart so they can see who you are and all the things within it, and you need job descriptions so they can say, aha, that's what I like doing, right? A lot of work, by the way. And it doesn't matter if you haven't got to that point, but this is just an illustration of what we need to be doing to be well, marketable, right? And effective. So what else did we do? We had a conversation with Pablo, and we looked at some of the operational elements and the emotional elements. You know, if you've been working in a temple for 47 years, then there's going to be attachments, right? Friendships, right? And actually it's very interesting. It's disturbing a lot of people that we're making plans to hand over, right? It disturbs people. And in different ways. There's people who say, oh, good, I can get in. Right? Or, oh, no, disaster. Who's going to look after me? Right? So it's challenging. There are emotional challenges that we need to face. And especially, you know, we joined, you know, my first service in the temple was, have a guess what? What do you think my first service was? Pot washer. Yeah, that means you've done it too. Yeah, pot washer. We started off at the lowest levels of ISKCON management, right? Pot washer and prasadam distributor, right? Then what came next? We made a presentation to our executive. We have an executive board of about 10 devotees. And keep in mind, some of us have worked together in ISKCON Melbourne for the better part of 40 years. Right? So we're friends. And we've worked together for a long time, which is one of the reasons why we've been somewhat successful in creating a sizable community. And why this is important, because of that. Then we presented a 5-phase legacy strategy, including documenting the process to choose a new TP. Now, as a result of this first step here, the top 10 positions, we identified that the 3 eldest, which is me, Achintya, Rupa and Dasa, he's our communications man, we need to be replaced pretty quickly because we're all over 70, right? And so we wanted to concentrate on finding individuals who could fill our roles. And what we discovered was that those 3 people probably fill 6 to 7 to 8 roles between them. And so, and the other factor is, we're not going to find one person or even 2 people that will replace Achintya, Rupa and I, simply because we've just been around for too long and have built things from smallish to now certainly a large temple. So the 4-phase legacy strategy was focused on working out what the process would be and then how we're going to implement that moving forward, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. So we gave that 4-phase strategy to our governance person in charge. And they came back with a 5-phase legacy strategy with the focus on removing the temple president. Replacing the temple president. For some reason or other, everybody focuses on the role of the temple president. I don't know why that is. Oh, no, I know why that is. You may know why that is too. There's a certain aura that comes with being the temple president in ISKCON. Hands up here, how many of you are temple presidents? Please raise your hands. Huh? And vice presidents? Okay, right. So you know what it means to be the president, right? Somebody important. Well, that's what we may think like that. You'd be surprised what other people think, or not. So anyway, that was a bit of a surprise for us, because what that meant was, in that plan, what that meant was when we got back to Melbourne in March, in a few weeks' time, I'd be replaced. So we said, hey, whoa, hang on, let's take it a bit easy here. And so we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and we're now going to share the consequences of that conversation with you. And, this is really food for thought for you, really. This is not, Aniruddha Uvacha, and this is how you should do everything. And keep in mind, in ISKCON, we haven't managed succession very well, frankly. Is it okay to say that we have a lot of empty chairs at the GBC level? Is that okay to say that, Devaki Dandan Prabhu? Unfortunately, it's true. And so, absolutely, yeah. And so that's why this is very important. And even if you're a young temple president or a younger vice president, we still need to think about having proteges and people that we can bring up and I tell you why this is scary, because effectively I've embarked on a journey now which effectively removes me from a position of influence and effectively power. Does that make sense? And that's a huge challenge. I've worked all of my life to get to this point, and now I'm pulling the rug out from underneath myself. Mind you, that's what Avanaprastha is supposed to do, by the way, if you read, if we look at our philosophy. Okay, so let's move on, shall we? We found some questions that might be appropriate for you. certainly appropriate for us, and food for thought as we move forward. What's the best way to choose a new president, since that's what we're focusing on? Although it's not just the president, because we're replacing the three eldest and arguably, certainly the three most influential positions in our community. How does legacy overlap with succession? We also want to honour the service that devotees have done, not just ourselves, but certainly we want to set a good example of appreciating the service of long-standing devotees. And even though we're the long-standing devotees, we still need to engender that culture within our community. And so, not that we want to, as Prabhupada says, this is not self-aggrandizement, but it should be a consideration, an appreciation, even if we're in part doing it for ourselves. In the middle, when's the ideal time? The answers are coming, by the way. When's the ideal time? Does the structure... Now, the interesting thing in Melbourne is our community is expanding, and expanding in a big way. In 2021, we celebrated Janmashtami in the main temple, and 21, 22, let's say, and we catered for about 10,000 people. In 2023 and 2024, we celebrated Janmashtami in 3 locations and catered for 25,000 people. Right? This year, we're going to be doing Janmashtami, Ram Navami, and Diwali, I think it is, in 4 locations. Right? So our reach certainly within the Hindu diaspora is expanding, and we have a lot of bhakti. We have 35 to 40 bhakti vriksas. They've got between 50 and 100 members. So in any given week, we've got 1,500 to 2,000 people meeting on a weekly basis in 35 to 40 locations, in people's homes, effectively. So it's exploding. When people say to me, or when people broadcast on Facebook or whatever, ISKCON is imploding and it's going nowhere. That's not my experience, and not our experience in Australia. I was in Singapore, and the community in Singapore is expanding. Right? So as a consequence of that, then as it expands, more people, more to manage, more to oversee, more to facilitate, right? So we need to change, to adapt. Mostly Indians, yes. Although Achintya, Rupa and I are Australians. We're Aussies. But yes, see, on a Sunday feast, for example, just to give you an idea, we get... Wintertime, 800 people come to a Saturday or a Sunday feast. Summertime, now, we get 1,100, 1,200 people come. 99.9% are Indian, no doubt. But we have, in our theatre, we have a kirtan program, and we get 40, 50, 60 Aussies. Huh? Now, why do we concentrate on the Indian community? Anybody know why we concentrate on the Indian community? They're searching for us. They're our best customers. They're our best customers. And they take to you don't have to tell them what an arti is or a puja or who Bhagavan is. You don't have to, they know the lot. Prabhupada says a birth in Bharatvarsha is most auspicious, right? Most auspicious. And you know, they've got bhakti, this is in the Bhagavatam, bhakti in their blood. And Prabhupada says even the Muslims, right? So pretty far out. And we have a big, the Indian diaspora, especially in the 90s and 2000s, with the IT kind of revolution, they come in droves to Australia. And especially students, right? So, yes. Yep. Last one. Is ISKCON, oh, this is an interesting one and something you should be aware of. Is ISKCON Melbourne sovereign enough to make local changes and suggest changes at a national level? So not only do you need to keep the peace at home, but you've also got to take into consideration the GBC's concerns and their wishes for what happens in your temple, plus, in our case, National Council. Some of you will have an RGB, some of you will have other national or regional bodies that you need to take into consideration, because they'll also have concerns. When I became the temple president in Melbourne in 1990, it took the National Council a day and a half to work out whether I was suitable or not. Right? Because ISKCON Melbourne was considered to be the jewel in the crown of ISKCON Australia. Right? So we have to also take into consideration what your GBC and what your National Council leadership want to see in your community. Right? Ignore it at your peril. Right? So, what are the answers? Here's our questions. Oh, okay. Just in case. Okay, we've got a team of people who want to do it and are enthusiastic to do it. We have documents and best practices from other temples. Not many other temples, interestingly enough, that have attempted this kind of a process, or even have things like org charts, right? And so there are resources. How does legacy and succession work together? They run together simultaneously. We've already worked out what the positions are, what the roles are, and so we're able to then identify, okay, who's going to fit that role? And in this particular case, we're looking at, Achintya Rupa really is our operations manager, right? If you don't clean the deity's plates properly, watch out, right? If you're in the kitchen to steal the Maha milk sweets and Achintya Rupa's there, watch out. She's the mum of the temple and isn't afraid to call you out if you're not behaving properly. But important, right? She's like the temple, well, we have another temple commander, but she's really why we call her the operations manager, right? The mum of the temple. Communications and kitchen management. So got to, the heartbeat of your temple is really the kitchen, or the deity worship, but certainly the kitchen. And one of the ways that you can be very successful in an ISKCON centre is if you have sumptuous prasadam, right? Korma used to tell us, you can have a fantastic program and terrible prasadam, and everybody will remember the prasadam. You can have a terrible program, but good prasadam, and everybody will talk about the prasadam, right? So kitchen's we're the kitchen religion, let's face it. Okay, when's the right time to do it? Well, have a guess what? There's no ideal time to retire yourself. Right? But for us, what's important in order to connect with the GBC and the National Council for us, when do they meet regularly? At their AGMs in May. And so presenting the plan in 2025, I don't know, actually that should say 2025 and 2026, to be honest. I don't know why. I'll tell Pablo that, just noticed it. So they're good times to check in with the National Council so you get approval for what you're doing and support, right? And maybe some recruits too, for that matter. Oh, I've forgotten what that was. Hang on. Does the structure... Oh, okay, yes. Does the structure need to change? Probably, because it's changing all the time. But we already have a constitution. A constitution needs attention, right? Because the constitution basically describes how your organisation functions, you know, when you have your annual general meetings, description of membership, how you remove members, how you make decisions. So constitution is important from an organisational point of view. And of course, the org chart will change as you expand and have more centres, for example. Then you'll have to change accordingly, adjust accordingly. Okay, and as I mentioned before, are we sovereign enough? Well, the answer to that question is no, yes and no. We can make certain changes internally, but ultimately we serve at the pleasure of our GBC members and at the pleasure of the national leadership. So we need to be careful. It's a political exercise, right? Political exercise. And how many of you like politics? Please raise your hands. How many of you dislike politics? Please raise your hands. You're in the wrong organisation. ISKCON means politics. Life means politics. Life is all about polity, right? Really is. So we do need to keep and consider the political environment that we live in and the interest, what do they call them? The nicks. How many of you have done Aniruddha Prabhu's communications course? Raise your hands. Okay, what's a nick? Manaram? Yeah, that's the first thing you learn. Right? Needs, interests and concerns of others. Super important for leaders in ISKCON. Okay, so let's move on. Where do we want to go? Where we want to get? English is not Pablo's first language. He's a Mexican. So I would have said, where do we want to go? But anyway. What do we want? Stability. Right? We're making changes, but at the same time we need stability within our communities. That's a strength. Damodar was telling me last night, telling Achintya, Rupa and I, Damodar from Chaupati, one of the devotee care advocates, to use Vaisheshika's terminology. And he said, there are 3 characteristics of leaders of successful communities. The acronym is SIM, right? Stability or steadiness, integrity. And he said integrity when it comes to handling money and dealing with women. Interesting. Well, he's a brahmachari, right? But that is important. And then maturity, right? These things are needed if there's to be, or they're features of a successful community. And so stability is first item, and it's important. So what we're moving towards is documenting the processes and our policies, because we haven't done this before. This is a new thing for ISKCON, broadly even. So we need to be able to identify these processes and then write the policies so that we've got a process then to hand on to the next generation as well. When I became the temple president resigned unexpectedly, and it was a surprise. I was very fortunate because I'd worked with Balaram Prabhu and Korma for the previous 12 years, and I was Balaram's secretary from about 1983, 1984 till 1990. So I had 6 years of on-the-job kind of. I used to go and get the mail. In those days, mobile phones didn't exist, by the way, right? And so I'd go to the post office, get the mail, bring it into Balaram's office, and then I'd sit there for 2 hours. And I was thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Right? But what I didn't realise was I was watching Balaram deal with GBC, with gurus, with other temple presidents, with the Sankirtan leader. I remember when the head pujari chased the kitchen manager up the stairs, threatening to punch his head in, and saw Balaram defuse what was a potentially very volatile situation. So I learned so much from Balaram in that 6 years, so that when I became the president, it wasn't entirely foreign to me. But I had a lot more to learn. So processes and policies are important. That's what we're going to be working on in the next 3 months. And keep these things going so that we're honouring the service of those devotees. This year is our 50th anniversary. So Srila Prabhupada came to Melbourne in May of 1975, 18th of May, and installed Gaunitai. And our temple, we're very fortunate because Radha Vallabha Prabhupada brought to Melbourne, little Radha Krishna Prabhupada brought to Melbourne and installed. He went on Ratha Yatra with Lord Jagannath, and he also installed Gaunitai. So when Prabhupada did the Prema Dwani after the installation of Gaunitai, he said, Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir Ki Jai. Right? So we have a tradition, if you like, or a history. So very fortunate to have that facility given to us by Srila Prabhupada. And so part of the 50th anniversary is to celebrate the achievements and the service of all of the devotees that have served in our temple over the last 50 years. And a portion of that we can of that time we can use to honour the devotees and their services. Okay, so here we have the Constitution. We need to make sure that the Constitution and the Executive Board, those who actually run and manage things, are in line, right? This is, how many of you have a Constitution in your organisation? Please raise your hands. Okay. There's a few people who don't look like they know what they're doing. Hands up those who don't have a constitution. Hands up those who don't know what a constitution is. Okay. What was that? Bylaws, yeah.
Bylaws.
Yes. In Australia we call it a constitution, but there are a variety of names around the world. So if you don't have a constitution, please get one. Right? Because it means you're probably not legally incorporated. Right? Which means in most jurisdictions, it means you're liable for everything that ISKCON does in that location. And that may be a scary thing. Although, having said that, some of you may be in a jurisdiction where that's not an easy thing to do, or may even not be desirable. So it needs to be carefully managed. But it is important, because if you have a constitution that outlines who you are, what you do, and how you do it, then you're able to then check to make sure that your executives are actually doing what they're supposed to do. And if they do something wrong, you can blow the whistle and say, right, foul, don't do that. Right? And I don't know if you've had the experience, but do people in ISKCON do things wrong from time to time? Have you experienced that? No. Why are you laughing? Of course. So we do, and Prabhupada talks about checks and balances. And if we're to be successful managers within ISKCON, we need to be aware of these things. And we need to be able to document them, right? And it may be a daunting task. You know, it's taken me 45 years, or a good part of 45 years to get to this point, 35 years as a manager. So it's not an easy undertaking, but I just share it with you for you to consider now. Yes. And one of the things that we're doing, one of the feedback that I got from our GBC especially was, don't resign. I'm planning to resign, and they're saying, don't resign. Okay, all right. What are we going to do? So the idea that's kind of bubbled up from a number of sources is that we appoint 5 vice presidents. That way we then delegate the roles and responsibilities that our top 3 people are covering. We delegate them to others, and over the course of the next year or a couple of years, I can remain as the overseer, right? But handing over the day-to-day management to others. That then keeps the GBC and the senior national leaders comfortable. Okay, change is happening, but it's not going to be abrupt, and we're not going to see a disturbance. Or, you know, we're turning over, this year we turned over 6.2 million Aussie dollars. You don't want a ship, you know, it's like a juggernaut rough cart, really. It all kind of trundles along. You don't want to see inexperienced managers losing money, for example. It can be very embarrassing. So these are some of the ideas that we have. We need to review our constitution, as mentioned. And we've been in our governance focus area leader has been in touch, certainly with the manor, and looking at how because manor's probably 5-10 years ahead of, Australia is probably 5 to 10 years behind the US and Europe, especially the manor, in terms of development. Right? Because these were the places where Prabhupada sent his disciples first. Australia wasn't an ISKCON outpost until 1969. Right, so we're a little bit behind. So it's good, because if the manor's ahead of us, we're able to look at their constitution and their structure, and especially the legal, the jurisdiction of Great Britain is very similar, or shall we say, the Australian jurisdiction is very similar to that of the UK because our laws come from the British laws. We're part of the Commonwealth. So that's a help. What are we going to do now? Oh, I'm having a chat with my friends here to find out what they're doing, right? India also is very well advanced in terms of managing ISKCON. The Bureau. And the fact that India, in terms of ISKCON, India is exploding more than anywhere else in the world. And so the ISKCON leaders have had a lot of experience in managing an expanding organisation, right? So we asked them for advice. Of course, that might be controversial too, but we won't go there. What else? And then we start working with what we've got. Prioritise the positions, budget. If you want to manage the ISKCON well, then you need to consider the fact that you'll attract householders. If you want competent people, you'll get, again, what is it? Stable. What's people with integrity and mature people. And usually if you want to keep them, you need to pay them, right? I know it's controversial, but if you try to run an organisation purely on volunteers, what do you get? What's that? Trouble. He gets trouble. It's like a revolving door, right? So, you know, we have cooks in our temple who've been serving for the last 25 years. Married, they were two of them in particular were brahmacharis when I met them. One of them here in Mayapur. And now he married a girl from Mayapur. Their son has just got entrance into Melbourne University. Their daughter has just completed, or is in the final stages of completing a double degree in law and commerce. Right? And just introduced her boyfriend to her mum and dad. And he's Greek Italian. They're Bengali villagers from Mayapur, right, pretty much. Devotees from Mayapur. And but an interesting thing is, he's a vegetarian, right? Loves prasadam and is even chanting a little bit of Hare Krishna. So you'll have single men join the ashram, but be prepared for the fact that eventually they'll get married, they'll have a family, the children will need education, and you better be prepared to pay for it. Right? So therefore budgets are required. If you want to look after, this is devotee care really. Budgets is related to devotee care. We'll attract people. If we want to keep them, we've got to support them. This was the tragedy of the 80s, where ISKCON wasn't able to maintain all of the householders, even though they were the lifeblood and the income of the temple. The temples couldn't maintain them because what happened? They got married, they had children, and too expensive. Huh? But we lost a lot of good people. So budgeting is important. And again, job descriptions, making sure your legal documentation is in order, and basically a lot of housekeeping. Okay, what else have we got here? Yeah, and we need to draft the process. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I've probably gone over time. Any comments or questions?
you very much, Prabhuji, for such a well laid out and very practical guidelines giving kind of presentation. I have two questions. One is regarding the 5 focus areas: finance, expansion, governance, community engagement, and succession.
Yes.
I'm not sure why is, let's say, training and education not part of it, and also I'm not just trying to understand the thought process of the
I'll
consultant.
answer that question.
Yeah.
The 5 focus areas were the most critical part of our broader SWOT analysis. So we looked at our strengths and weaknesses and our opportunities and threats. We have a very strong Board of Education and a strong educational component within our community. So we've got Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta. We also have a Bhakti Sarvabhauma course, right, which probably no other temple in the world has, right? So we're training pretty much on average every year for the last 5 years. We've been initiating 75 devotees. Right? That means they've done the Founder Acharya course, they've read the Lilamrita and passed an exam, and they've done the disciple course. Plus they're also doing some service. Right? So education is a very strong element of our community, but it wasn't critical in the 5 focus areas. It's already trundling along. And so the 5 focus areas is just where we are
lagging.
Yeah, struggling. Could need improvement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Second question is regarding the questions that were asked. What is the best way to choose a new TP? How does legacy overlap succession, etc.?
Yeah.
In that, the 5th question was related to national and local level of decision making.
Yep.
I was thinking, why is there not one more question being asked, and that is, how can we make the transition smooth? Because that was one of the part of...
We'll add that in. Next version will have the answer.
And the continuation of that is, what are the things we need to do to make it smooth? Some tips can you give?
Ooh. Well, see, we're just about to embark on this journey. This is a question you can ask me next year. And look, we're already experiencing turbulence. We've had one devotee telling the others, I'm going to be the next temple president. Right? And they're freaking out. He told me what I was going to be doing when he's going to be the next temple president. And I don't want to do it. Right? So that freaks people out. Then we're just noticing a little bit of unease in the troops. Right? Because it's, it's the unknown. And, because Achintya Rupa and I have been such, integral parts of the furniture, then there are a lot of, the kids call me Dadu, and they call Achintya Rupa Daddy. Right? So we're like the grandma and the grandpa of the younger kids. And so there's understandably, concern. What's going to happen? And as I said, our friend said, don't resign, just die of the job. Huh? And also what's happening is, we're noticing, because we have a large community, there are people who come along and, there's when the mangoes are in the tree, the birds come along and peck it to see how ripe it is and what it's going to taste like, right? So we have people coming along and pecking and pushing and prodding and trying to take advantage of 35 years of hard work, not only of Achintya Rupa and I, but of many of the leaders in the community. And so there's kind of like gets a bit there's a bit of disease, if you like, dis-ease, unease in the community. So how do we, I think probably regular communications with people, finding out what, this is what I've been thinking over the last few days, find out what concerns people have and then regularly explain to them what you're doing and just keep the communications going.
I also have like one question and one comment. My first question is, can you tell us all your strong points in the SWOT analysis so that we can write down what can we be missing? Because you have given us your weak points. So can you just name one or two more strong points?
We've
got
strengths. We've got beautiful deity worship. We've got delicious prasadam. We've got a team of devotees who have worked together for a few decades and who work together cooperatively. We've got a central location. We're in Albert Park, which is pretty much in the centre of Melbourne, which is an advantage but also a disadvantage because now we've got too many people coming to the temple. We've got a strong complement of volunteers. So there are probably 200 brahmanas in our community that vie for positions on the altar and in the kitchen, except in December when they all go on holidays to India. Right? But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And one takeaway that I was thinking about when you were giving this presentation is when we are developing a community, like once say temple is coming up. So why not plan all these things at that point only so that the entire procedure of making and handing over to the next generation becomes so smooth and automatic. We don't have to think and work out and struggle on all these points.
Well, Prabhupada gave us the infrastructure but not all of the details. And the way ISKCON has been bootstrapped, which means we started from nothing, there wasn't an opportunity to describe everything that you're going to do because it depends on circumstances and opportunities that might arise over, it's now 50 years, right? So it wouldn't have been possible to start the planning right at the beginning because the experience wasn't there. And also in ISKCON, it's commonly understood Prabhupada was the only adult in ISKCON in the 70s.
So
right?
I'm saying, my saying is that since you have learned,
yeah,
and at that time circumstances were entirely different. You were so young kids with Prabhupada. But now we can learn from you people and inculcate all these things from the base in the future temples that is coming in ISKCON. That's what I'm saying.
Even we're making it up. Right? Even we're creating as we go along. So that's why I'm here. To at least show, it's, what do they call it? WIP. You know what WIP stands for? Work in progress. Yeah. So some of these answers, next year you can ask us when we've got to the point where we hope to be or where we aspire to be. Okay, I think it's my time is up. Maharaj is here. Maharaj, you're speaking next? Yeah. Welcome, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj. Thank you, everybody. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.